You deserved everything you got. This is a union city.
That is a Philadelphia tradition.
Seize the means of podcasting.
Oh God, the bosses crushed us.
Let me tell you one thing else.
In oldie-timey times,
Who said it? Kanye West or Thomas
we
Paine?
will not raw dog reality for that one.
The pleasure of the flesh is in solidarity.
The Scab Buster.
It's gonna be wholly unprofessional.
Eight together strong. Let that be your mantra.
Hello and welcome to the Labor John podcast, where it's always darkest before the dawn. Just remember that. Oh my god. Even I don't believe that shit. Hello and welcome. We're starting off bad.
This is perfect.
Starting off bad, continuing bad, and just like this country. Hello and welcome to the Labor John podcast. My name is Sam. Everything's right in this world. And I'm joined because everything's right in this world is because I have right next to me virtually the greatest co-host that has ever existed in the history of mankind.
Well, I'm flattered. I don't like that you're lying to our listeners because you are the greatest co-host to ever have been invented by mankind.
You know what?
So.
I know what you're saying, and it's a nice thing to say. But you're the greatest co-host in the history of mankind. Gabe.
Well, tonight, Sam, we're going to talk about...
We can just keep filleting each other.
I mean, save that for the Patreon episode.
There we go. At www.patreon.com/LaborJohn. Give us your money, because no one else will.
Yep. So...
What are we going to learn about today, Gabe?
So right now, the city of Philadelphia is not being very nice to its Asian community.
Oh no.
Yes. The owners of the Philadelphia 76ers is the city's basketball team.
Who are apparently the owners of the city of Philadelphia, apparently.
Yes. That does seem to be accurate. They want to build a stadium in Center City. And to do that, they need to kind of like reshape Chinatown.
That's a nice way to put it. That's a nice way to put it. For funsies?
Yeah. So with all of that context in mind, today I want to talk about another time that the city was really shitty to its Asian community. The 1985 Admiral Court rent strike.
All right. I don't like how we're like, hey, we were horrible to these people all the way back then, and we still are horrible to these people all the way now. That's great.
Philly is a city of traditions.
No, it's a city of neighborhoods, just not Asian American neighborhoods.
Yeah, or the powers that be very actively try to not make it that.
Yes.
All
right, Gabe. This is either going to be like a balls to the wall fun episode, or is this going to be the most horrible thing I've ever heard in my entire life, and I'm going to get more depressed?
It's going to be both.
Yay! I love that. Labor John. Yeah. That's a Labor John episode if I heard one.
Yeah. Yes.
All right.
So Admiral Court apartments in 1985 were primarily, or the tenants in Admiral Court were primarily Vietnamese and Cambodian refugees.
Okay. All right.
So
they had a great time. Their life was perfect.
Yes.
And
so
mostly thanks to America.
Yeah. And that's what we're going to talk about here. Because before we get into it, I want to give an explanation as to why we had so many Cambodian and Vietnamese refugees in Philadelphia in the 1980s specifically.
I think if there's one thing we learned from this past presidential election is that you just don't ask questions. Everything is surface level. Don't ask any questions past that. And no, Gabe, we're going to continue on. We're not going to learn about the past of why the Vietnamese are here right now.
Well, as much as I would love to run on vibes, we run on history.
We run on vibes and history, Gabe.
Yeah, we do. We vibe on history.
All right. Who did a colonialism?
Oh, lots of people.
Good. I'm happy about that, Gabe. I'm so happy.
So Vietnam is a nation in Southeast Asia. Basically, eastern seaboard of the Southeast Asian peninsula.
Yes.
And there's documentation of human habitation there at least 20,000 years ago, probably older. And we're going to truncate that history into a couple of minutes.
As we do.
Yeah.
Respectfully.
Yes. So, normal human development, agriculture, and then empires, multiple empires coming and going.
Damn, you weren't joking.
Yeah.
We get through this.
Then in the 1500s, Europeans started showing up.
And everything has been fine ever since.
Yeah, there were no problems. So Portuguese traders and missionaries started coming. But they didn't really establish any permanent presence. Like the Portuguese did they had a weird colonialism where they just kind of went and would buy and sell things and then leave like Jesuit monks.
Okay, like here's our God. You can believe with them if you want, but I mean, like you don't have to.
And then we're gonna sell you weapons and buy whatever is most popular in Europe at the time.
Empires are gonna empire, Gabe.
Yep. But then
here's some weapons and religion.
Yeah. That is the European introduction to the rest of the world. Here's gunpowder weaponry, despite the fact that they already had gunpowder weaponry because,
Yeah.
They
were a bit ahead of us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Us. I say us.
Yeah.
Like we're the ones doing this shit.
But then the French showed up.
Oh.
And they brought Vietnam into their empire as part of French Indochina. That
was nice.
Yeah.
That's one of the nicest things you can do is bring someone into your empire.
Yeah, it was very kind of them. And the French had the strategy of like, you'd keep local aristocracy and like the local kings and everything in place, and then you ruled through them.
Okay.
But it was still very much part of the French colonial empire. And then in the 20th century, there was continual resistance to the French rule and presence there, especially from some Marxist revolutionary groups, including 3 separate communist parties just in Vietnam.
Oh, God.
Because
just in Saigon alone.
Yeah. So, and then the other complicating factor in all of this is World War II happens. Japan comes in, kicks the French out, and then does their own little bit of imperialism.
Yeah. Everyone's got to get a little peace in,
Yeah. But they gave like more home rule to Vietnam. And then after the war, it was granted Vietnam was granted independence. At which point,
you can have this.
Yeah, one of the communist groups, this one led by Ho Chi Minh.
Oh ho Ho Chi Minh, ho Ho Chi Minh.
Declared the creation of the Democratic Republic of Vietnam.
Good old Uncle Ho.
Yeah. But lo and behold, all the capitalist Western nations were like, hold on there a minute, bucko. And so they came in and occupied it after, because they had kicked out the Japanese and like, all right, we're going to quote unquote occupy it as a peacekeeping force. And so the French tried to reassert colonial rule. That didn't work. And then they split the country in two, with the north being...
they've seen the light, so...
Yeah. split the country in two, the North being communist, the South being theoretically democratic.
Whatever we decide it is.
Yeah.
Whoever we put in power, apparently. So
yeah, the South being friendly to the West as their primary political driving force. And then that led to basically a like civil war / proxy war / just war that lasted from the 1950s into the 1970s.
God damn, that is a long time to live with war.
Yes. It basically devastated the entire country, killed up to 3 million people, and made life pretty miserable.
Yeah.
And so then when South Vietnam fell in 1975...
you're totally missing the part where America joins in the fun, Gabe.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best part.
The U.S. slowly got more and more involved in the 60s, and then got really, really involved in the late 60s. And then was like, hey, this is a bad idea. We're just going to leave and not fix anything. We're peace with or was it peace with honor or whatever it was? And just pulled out of South Vietnam.
Yeah, we like to do that a lot.
Yeah. And it's never had any negative consequences.
No, we're doing pretty good.
And so a lot of the that was like the first wave of refugees when the U.S. left Vietnam, because everyone who had like collaborated with U.S. forces was now very much at risk of being penalized for doing that.
Yeah.
And there were some legitimate fears of some of the some of the smaller or the like minority ethnic groups that wanted to maintain some level of independence, and but regardless, after the U.S. pulled out, there was a large wave of Vietnamese refugees coming to the United States, and they were getting resettled all across the country, Philadelphia being one of them, or being one of the cities. Now we're going to talk about Cambodia.
Oh, fuck.
So Cambodia is another country in Southeast Asia. This is to the west of Vietnam, on like the southernmost section of the Southeast Asian peninsula. And again, we're going to cover...
It's okay, Gabe.
Very quickly cover 20,000 years of Cambodian history.
It's okay.
It's okay. Let's fast forward part of French Indochina. After World War II, the French wanted to reinsert control of Cambodia, which had already declared its independence under Japanese occupation. The French came in after World War II and were like, hey, we know you were technically independent, but do you want to not be independent anymore? And Cambodia said, no. Do you want to not be independent anymore?
We have got a great idea for you.
Mm-hmm.
It involves snails.
No, we give you snails. You give us all of the wealth of your country. I think this is perfectly fair.
Ooh, natural resources. What one if I do? Respectfully.
Respectfully. Do we have to be respectful to imperial powers?
No, we're not being. We're respectful to the people of Cambodia.
Oh, yes, yeah,
and French people who are not involved in dismantling another state. So
yeah. So by 1953, they had reached an agreement where Cambodia would have independence. The newly established Kingdom of Cambodia would continue as a sovereign nation with a king.
Did they have a king beforehand, Gabe?
They did before, yes, under French rule. And then they, if I remember correctly, they were technically a democracy with or like theoretically a democracy,
Okay.
with independence under Japan. But
Yeah.
it's complicated.
All right. That's fine.
So
it's fine.
Yeah. So again, they border Vietnam.
Yes,
and then throughout the entire conflict in Vietnam, they tried to maintain a very strict neutrality.
How'd that work out for him, Gabe?
So both the United States and North Vietnam regularly violated their territorial sovereignty. Vietnam did it by moving troops and supplies through border regions. The U.S. did it with an illegal bombing campaign.
By bombing the shit out of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Leaving thousands dead, entire farming regions decimated. Additionally, they left a shit ton of mines and explosives all over the farmland.
They'll find them, Gabe. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's great. So in 1970, it's also going to get worse. In 1970, Prince Norodom Sihanouk was overthrown in a military coup. The U.S. backed the perpetrators of the coup.
Of course.
So the prince aligned himself because the U.S. wanted to be able to use Cambodia as a staging ground to attack North Vietnam. And they thought that if they supported the coup, then they would have an in with the new government. Great stuff. So the U.S. backed the perpetrators of the coup. In response to that, the prince aligned himself with the Cambodian communists. Under which were the Communist Party of Kampuchea.
Yeah. Fuck.
Which later became known as the Khmer Rouge.
Fuck. How did I totally gloss over the Khmer Rouge?
Yeah. So that led to the Khmer Rouge growing in popularity, eventually fighting and mostly winning a revolution. And then that led to a civil war, which overthrew the Khmer Republic and created Democratic Kampuchea.
Kampuchea.
Which was what they renamed Cambodia under the Khmer Rouge. So the Khmer Rouge effectively went on a campaign of genocide.
Yeah, that happened.
They tried to emulate the Chinese Great Leap Forward, but did a really bad job of it. And then they also rounded up and killed all of their political opponents, including other Cambodian communists.
Hey, pot kills, specifically Pol Pot.
Yeah. So they ended up killing either directly or because of their policies, which led to famine, around 2 million people, which was about 25% of the total population.
Damn, man. That's a dam and a half.
Yeah. So this, of course, throughout all of this, there was another refugee crisis happening as people fled. And people were generally fleeing into Vietnam and then out through Vietnam because the Khmer Rouge were pushing more and more towards the Vietnamese border, if I understand this correctly. I could be wrong on that, but that was my understanding. And then as Khmer Rouge forces kept attacking Vietnamese border areas, in 1979, Vietnam invaded Cambodia, or invaded Democratic Kampuchea.
You didn't see that coming, bitch.
And then that led to the United States allegedly providing support to the Khmer Rouge.
What the hell?
America.
What the hell?
Because they still wanted to get back at Vietnam for quote unquote coming to a draw in the Vietnam War. So all of that history to bring us up to the 1980s.
You just wanted to piss me off, Gabe. And it worked.
So there were about 130,000 Vietnamese refugees and about 149,000 Cambodian refugees who came to the U.S. Between the 70s and 80s. In Philadelphia, 200 of them ended up living in a place called Admiral Court.
Okay.
So, Admiral Court is an apartment complex at 48th and Locust Street in West Philly. It's in the 80s. It had 76 units theoretically available.
Okay.
At some point in
This
the early
theoretically
80s,
a room? What does that mean?
well, so at some point in the early 80s, it suffered a major fire to one wing.
Oh.
The other wing was still occupied in 1982 with 34 families living in it. And so that's the full background. And now we're in November of 1982.
Oh, okay. All right.
And this is the first time Admiral Court shows up in the news. So
this is the episode proper start.
Yes.
All right.
Two of the most tax delinquent developers in Philadelphia.
You kidding me?
Teamed up to operate the building. Records came to light that the building's owner, Eugene Dale Sands, signed a deed agreeing to give 50% ownership to another developer named Arab Ali.
All right.
Sands, who at this point had fled to Florida to avoid arrest after failing to remedy other housing code violations in his other properties.
Are you kidding me now?
Yeah. So Sands claimed that he had brought in Ali to repair the damaged wing in exchange for some unspecified co-ownership deal in the future.
All right.
The 34 families who were living there, at this point, they actually were mostly Vietnamese and Laotian. I didn't have time to get into the whole history of the house.
Yeah.
And they had suffered from a lack of heat and hot water for most of 1982.
Oh.
And then in the fall of 1982, they only had sporadic hot water.
Okay.
So it was just coming off and on randomly.
God bless America, greatest country in the entire world. Okay, I don't know what you're talking about.
That's what we treat, or that's how we treat people affected by our overseas policies.
Give me your tired, you're poor.
Yep. And we will put them in.
We will give you intermittent hot water
in a building that is half burnt down
and half owned by some guy in Florida.
Yep. Some guy who fled to Florida to avoid arrest. If only there was some kind of connection with a developer fleeing to Florida to avoid arrest that we could make to our modern day. I don't know.
Well, Gabe, that man is the president. That ain't going to happen anytime soon, son.
Yep. But anyway, so the tenants at Admiral Court had started to receive help from the Walnut Hill Community Development Corporation and the Tenants Action Group.
The tag.
Yeah. So they both spoke with the tenants. It got them to pay their rent into an escrow fund to get so that eventually they could get all of the immediately necessary repairs completed for the building.
Yeah. Is there a floor?
Yes. Does your toilet flush? Do you have hot water on a regular basis?
Do you have a toilet?
Do you have a toilet? That actually comes up later. So they got them to start doing that.
Okay.
But it looks like pretty shortly after that, most of the tenants just returned to paying their rents as usual. It's also unclear as to where this rent was going.
Oh.
City records indicated that no one had paid utility bills for the building since 1979.
What?
But in Yeah.
No, continue, please.
But in 1981, records showed that the owners of the building had collected $55,000 in rent.
What the fuck is happening?
Yeah, $55,000 was collected and no one knows where the fuck it went. So
where were they getting the utilities from? If it's not being, am I asking too many questions?
That was never really explained. It seems like the Pico just never shut anything off. And it could be, I'm not familiar with like how, or I know utilities were billed to the owner. So it might be that he just had 3 years of back pay and just wasn't paying it.
Yeah.
Okay. But the city knew that it wasn't the tenant's fault, so they're not going to cut them off. So the city inspected the building in April 1982, declared it unfit for human habitation.
How bad does that have to be?
Mm-hmm.
Damn.
After which, the building superintendent, who was actually a Vietnamese refugee herself, named Kim Lee Guy, tore down the sign, told the tenants that the building was fit, and told them not to worry about it, and then went back to collecting rents.
Ooh.
So the inspectors returned on November 10th, 1982, determined that because heat and hot water was not being provided, the building was in fact unfit for human habitation.
Fair.
And put another sign up.
Oh, not another sign.
Yeah. At which point, Sands and Ali, the owners, protested, claiming that the building was perfectly fit and that they were providing adequate heat and hot water to the tenants.
Are the landlords going to go on strike, Gabe? Is this going to be the best episode yet?
Sadly, no. But the L&I inspectors suspected that they had only turned the heat back on for their inspection, and said that they would drop by in colder winter months to check to see if the heat was still on.
Okay.
When it was actually needed in like the dead of winter.
Yeah.
So in addition to the lack of heat and hot water in the building, the plumbing was constantly leaking, causing water damage to multiple apartments and posing an ongoing risk of black mold to everyone living in the building.
Fuck it. I'm going to go back to the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
At least they had hot running water. Goddamn.
So December 1982, the agreement between Ali, whatever agreement there was, because no one can agree on this, but the agreement between Ali and Sands started to fall apart. Apparently, Ali was dissatisfied with whatever agreement he had with Sands and had started telling the tenants that he was the sole owner. And he tried to collect rent himself. In response to this, the Sands told Kim Lee Guy, the building superintendent, to shut the building down, close the rentals office, and lock Ali out.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
She then told the tenants to hold on to their December rents and someone would come collect them later. She then fired the maintenance worker and left.
Oh.
So
what the fuck?
Middle of December.
Why? I feel like there's this. Are you getting this from like a Dateline episode or something? Like some like
all Philadelphia Daily News.
Oh, Daily News. All right, let's go.
So, basically, middle of December, 34 families just got abandoned in this building. The fact that she fired the maintenance worker before leaving.
What the fuck was that?
They basically, Sands was wiping his hands of the entire thing and was just relinquishing the entire building. Didn't want anything to do with it anymore.
All right. Florida does that to some people, you know?
Mm-hmm. So this left the tenants without anyone to do like basic day-to-day repairs.
Yeah, anything.
So, these are also basic day-to-day repairs in a building that was already unfit for human habitation.
It was already falling apart.
Yeah. Half of it was literally burnt down.
Yeah.
So supposedly Sands had an agreement with the Walnut Hill Development Corporation that they would take over management if Sands agreed to sell it to them in the future so that they could turn it into cooperative housing.
Okay.
So that's what Walnut Hill Development Corporation said they had presented to Sands.
Okay. Who still has only 50% of the ownership still, right?
It's still unclear. Like they were litigating that in court while all of this was going on.
All right.
And yeah, this basically like the two shadiest real estate developers just fucked each other, and then
which is okay, but other people got fucking caught up in the mess. That's the problem.
34
people who've been
families
through
got
enough
caught in
shit.
Seriously, like literally two of the worst wars of the late 20th century, and at least one genocide.
That is. Oh man.
Yeah. So
I get pissed when I put the wrong shoe on the wrong foot.
It puts it in a little bit of perspective.
It does.
It does not seem like Sands responded to the request from Walnut Hill Development.
All right.
The City Department of Licenses and Inspections then sought a court order to appoint a receiver to collect rents and manage the building.
All right.
Additionally, the city's tax department asked the federal... Oh, I forgot to mention, while all of this was going on, Sands declared bankruptcy to try and avoid any liability.
I don't think you can do that.
Yep. So the city's tax department asked federal bankruptcy court to deny Sands' bankruptcy filing so that they could claim the taxes as payment, or they could basically sue him for the $27,000 in back taxes that he owed just on the Admiral Court property. And mind you, he was already delinquent in back taxes on all of his other properties in the city.
Gabe, was this was the episode you picked for the after Trump win, right? Specifically for this one, right? I just want to. I mean, the correlations are astounding.
I actually just picked this one for the connection to Chinatown, but
hey man, as we say, history doesn't repeat itself, but goddamn rhymes.
Yeah. So
all the time.
I apologize to the United States. It's because I picked this episode that Donald Trump won. No other reason. No one else can be blamed for this. But anyway,
I blame Jill Stein and you, Gabe.
She actually co-wrote this episode. So by the end of 1982, the tenants at Admiral Court, basically multiple parties were all vying for control of the building.
Damn.
They didn't have heating or hot water. Basically, only the Walnut Hill Development Corporation was actually like trying to help them.
Yeah. Everyone just wanted the land.
Yeah, everyone else just wanted the land or to sue the owner for back taxes. And yeah, then
that's crazy, man.
Yeah.
And the fact that like the rent keeps getting brought up. Oh yeah, we'll collect your rent. Oh yeah, we'll collect your rent. Make sure you have your rent out for December.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's like they're living in a hovel and it's like
yeah.
There's something wrong with this country, Gabe.
There's a lot
wrong with this country.
There's a lot. All right. Now we're going to fast forward to 1985.
Oh, okay.
The Walnut Hill Development Corporation's bid to acquire the property and turn it into cooperative housing doesn't seem to have gone anywhere.
Still? Wow.
My best guess, because I wasn't able to dive into like the city records of this, but it seems that the city my guess is the city assumed control of it and then sold it to recoup some of the lost tax revenue. But regardless of how we got there, by 1985, Admiral Court had a new owner, another developer by the name of Mark Silverstein, who was also well known in the city for basically being a slumlord. And also a tax dodge. So
hey,
it's great. So it doesn't look like anything had actually been done to improve quality of life at Admiral Court.
That's a shame.
Yep. The only other mention I could find of it in the news was a break-in and murder that happened in 1983.
Oh, okay.
So things were great. Also by 1985, tenants were still suffering from spotty utilities.
Come on, man.
There seems to have been a fair amount of turnover in the tenants themselves. They were mostly refugees still, but by 85, they had moved to Vietnamese and Cambodian refugees. So because of their precarious situation in the US, that they didn't speak the language, most of them had very little money and were living off of welfare subsidies from the government. And effectively only like one or two organizations were coming to help them.
Yeah.
Because refugee resettlement was effectively like, we'll give you some money, here's a place you can rent and buy. Most of the tenants didn't really complain about their conditions because they were all they were all concerned that if they complained or like made any kind of a fuss, they'd be kicked out immediately.
Yeah.
And this is also where like the Admiral Court being owned by slumlords was somewhat beneficial to them, because let me explain. Because most of them had large families, they were technically breaking federal occupancy laws in most of these apartments. And they were worried that if they went anywhere else, they would get denied, because basically any like up and up apartment building that was actually on the level would deny them because they would have too many people.
Yeah. 20 people in an apartment is probably a little too much.
Yeah. So they just felt trapped at Admiral Court. Now,
but at least they're together, Gabe.
Yeah.
Solidarity.
Yeah. Now we're going to get into the fun part.
There we go.
So some local community organizations had taken an interest in the tenants, specifically Community Legal Services, the Tenants Action Group that was coming back, the Philadelphia Refugee Center, and the Housing Association of the Delaware Valley. They had all gotten in touch with the tenants. And again, the tenants were hesitant to speak to anyone.
Yeah, that's fair.
But they were at least like starting to lay the groundwork. I should also mention Debbie Way, who she's currently one of the leading voices in the No Arena in Chinatown campaign.
Yeah, okay.
And I believe she founded Asian Americans United. And she actually founded that in 1985.
Oh, all right.
Or she was one of the founders of it. So they were all like starting to build the groundwork, getting to know the tenants, getting their trust. But no one really, there wasn't any like major push to do anything yet, until there was a sudden increase in their monthly bills.
Uh-oh.
For some unknown reason, Mark Silverstein, the owner of the building, had told Pico to start billing the tenants directly.
Oh.
Rather than him being supposed to pay the bills. So all of a sudden, the tenants started getting these electricity bills, which none of them had ever received before. And eventually, word got round to Leslie Gerstein of the Community Legal Services. So Gerstein went around basically to like all of that long list of advocacy groups and Debbie Way, and various interpreters spent weeks meeting with all of the tenants, explaining their legal rights as tenants in the United States, and also like getting their stories and trying to build a case effectively.
Okay.
After a lot of deliberation, they were finally able to convince the tenants to confront Silverstein. And in early July 1985, or when rent was due, probably July 1st, 1985, they started a rent strike.
Hey, okay.
And refused to pay. So they knew that the first step was to get all of the PICO bills out of their names, which Gerstein was able to do by contacting PICO directly, explaining the situation, and PICO agreed.
Really?
Yeah, they were just like, oh yeah, that's not right. We shouldn't have made that agreement with Silverstein. So they refunded all of the charges to all of the tenants.
All right, Pico.
And then dispatched a crew to look over the situation. And when that crew got there, they actually weirdly tried to, like, half convinced the tenants to keep everything in their names.
Okay.
In the individual tenants' names. And Gerstein, who didn't know that was happening, heard it like through a third person or something, that there were PICO guys at Admiral Court. And so she like ran down there and then finally was able to convince them, like, no, you don't want these bills in your name. They need to be in the building owner's name.
Yeah.
And so she, like, within like an hour, she had to reverse this whole thing or she had to fix this whole thing that she had just reversed. So
the life of an organizer.
Yeah. And it was also, I think there were at least 3 separate languages being spoken at this point.
Seriously.
Or I guess 4, because English. And they had so they had to just keep having the same conversation over and over and over again with every family.
Yeah.
All right. So that was like the first couple days of the rent strike. Then Silverstein responds with 8 immediate eviction notices and eviction warnings to everyone else in the building.
Really? Come on, guy.
Yeah. So he then got very indignant and went to the press about how he had contacted the city.
No.
Oh, yeah.
Don't.
To seek funding to rehabilitate the building and get repairs started.
What?
So that the tenants should be grateful to him and stop the rent strike.
Oh my God.
That
jerk off.
Yeah. So then all of those community organizations came together and issued a statement in response saying that if Silverstein was able to move forward with his planned improvements, it's likely that he would end up evicting everyone anyway, because if he wanted to do renovations to the building, then they would have to bring in federal code. All of the building would have to be brought up to federal code, which meant they would have to kick out all of the large families.
Yeah. Yeah.
So because in order to have the larger families, he would have had to reduce the number of units and combine some of them into a larger unit. So after that little spat, Silverstein resorted to another tactic, which was cutting off their hot water.
No!
Yep. Luckily, all of those support organizations found out about the hot water shutoff.
Yeah.
Again, most of the tenants themselves were too scared to talk about it. So they ended up hearing about it from one of the families who was already issued an eviction notice, who just complained about it offhand. Because they were Gerstein was there to give them legal advice on the eviction. And then they just like casually mentioned, oh yeah, we don't have hot water today. And Gerstein was like, wait, what?
Excuse me, what?
Yeah. And then dug a little bit.
They took our floors yesterday too.
Yeah, it was like the building got knocked down. It's fine.
We're walking around on the pipes.
Yeah.
The pipes that have no hot water in them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're safe to walk on now.
There we go. Thank you, Silverstein.
Yeah. Silverstein with a silver lining.
There we go.
So the
I feel so dirty.
I know. So that gave Gerstein the opportunity on July 18th to bring back license and inspection.
Ooh.
At which point they found it had no hot water. They immediately issued an unfit for habitation warning.
Oh no.
In addition to documenting over 100 other violations.
Oh my God.
And what that meant was once you have the unfit for habitation on your building, that not only gives you a better case in court to fight the eviction, but it also means that now the tenants are legally allowed to put their rents into escrow to pay for repairs, which basically just legalized the entire rent strike. Now, Silverstein's statement,
friend of the show,
when asked about the unfit for habitation ruling and tenants not having hot water and everything, he said, the tenants can have hot water when they pay rent.
Fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
Fuck you, Silverstein.
The paper also talked to Kim Kao, who was a Cambodian mother of 3 who had lived there since December of 82 in an apartment with a broken toilet, a leaky bathroom, and a leaky bathroom ceiling. She received about $400 a month in welfare. $270 of that went to rent.
Damn.
Yeah. And so she said, or when talking to the Daily News, she said, most Cambodians and Vietnamese who live here are scared they will have to go to court. I am not afraid. America is very good and nice. I don't think every place is like this. This time I must try. I try the best I can. And
that's fucking sweet as shit, man.
Yes. Like,
I feel for her.
Yeah. And then on July 29th, the tenants won their next major battle. One of the 8 eviction notices received a stay in court.
Okay.
So Judge Thomas McCormick ruled in favor of the defendant, a guy named Sok Pho, because one of the joint owners of Admiral Court, because again, every time Admiral Court comes up, it has 2 owners for some reason. And the way this had happened was Silverstein owned it. He sold half of the ownership to a third party who then sold it to David Shapiro. David Shapiro then shows up in court and says he did not want to evict anyone.
Yeah, who the fuck is Dave Shapiro?
Dave Shapiro was not a property owner. He was not like a developer. He was a construction company owner.
Okay, all right.
So
he just bought interest in an apartment building?
Yeah, because his plan was to fix up the burnt down section.
Okay.
So he stated in court under oath he didn't want to evict anyone. That means that without consent of both owners, the judge ruled the eviction notice was void.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Which means that none of the tenants who had been threatened with eviction during the strike could be kicked out.
There we go.
In response to this, Silverstein...
I was about to say the system's working for a chance, but for the actual people.
Yeah.
What about Silverstein?
Silverstein said, the lawyers can keep people from getting evicted, but they can't make Admiral Court a better place. CLS, which is Community Legal Services, can't clean up the place. Only a landlord making or taking in some money can do that.
You can't do shit, Silverstein. It's been shown you can't do shit.
He didn't do shit when he was taking in money.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, like,
Silverstein. The fuck you on, man?
So, in contrast, Shapiro stated in an affidavit that he wanted the court to partition ownership of the building between the two wings so that he could start improvements.
Fair. Okay.
He also stated that the tenants, have a right to live like human beings with dignity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all you needed to say.
Like, it's sad that that's the bare minimum.
I know, right? Isn't that surprising that we actually think like that we're happy that someone actually said that?
Yeah.
That these are actual human beings
and deserve some dignity?
Wow, what a low point. Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about landlords, so
true. That's fair.
So throughout August, the tenants and their helpers continued to withhold rent and fight their case in court. By mid-August, the Common Pleas Court issued $5,000 in fines against Mark Silverstein for not correcting over 100 violations in the building.
5,000?
Yeah, it's really not that much.
No, it's not.
But I guess it would be $50 per violation.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
So in response to that, Shapiro started the process of actually repairing the building.
Really?
Yep.
His wing? Or he doesn't have his wing yet, right?
No.
So, okay. So where they're actual staying?
Yeah. Yeah. So like where people were living. By August 27th, work crews were removing garbage, tearing up old waterlogged carpet, and installing new electrical appliances.
All right. What baby does Dave Shapiro kill in the next segment, Gabe? Because like I'm feeling too good about this landlord right now.
We're going to be in a weird spot for a little bit. Just get through it.
All right.
So also the new appliances that they installed. So they finally put fire alarms in this building, half of which had already burnt down. They didn't think to put fire alarms in after one wing burns down.
I mean, I don't know. Lightning doesn't strike the same place twice, Gabe, does it?
Yeah, definitely not. Especially not when that place is an entire city block.
Covered in garbage.
Yeah. So Shapiro said that he would try and get all of the health code violations taken care of within 30 days.
Okay.
After which time he planned to start renovating the apartments to get them fully refurbished.
All right. Okay. I'm okay with this.
The tenants were still withholding their rent. They didn't trust Shapiro or Silverstein.
Yeah.
And they're like, and fair enough. Their concern, I think, was probably that they were doing this, like they were making a good show to get the rent strike to end.
Yeah.
And then they might try and jack shit up again.
Yeah.
But basically they said that until they saw like actual progress made on refurbishment, they're not going to pay rent.
Okay.
But it looks like by November of 1985, they were satisfied because presumably all of the health code violations were cleaned up in September. And then as October went on, they actually started refurbishing some of the apartments. They had collected $1.8 million from various community organizations to rehab the building. And the city offered Shapiro a $230,000 short-term loan to keep the tenants living in their current apartments during all of the renovation processes.
Oh, okay.
So basically, like both city and community orgs started actually investing in this building.
Yeah.
Jeremiah White of the Refugee Services or Service Center and City Councilman Lucian E. Blackwell worked together with Shapiro to create a rehabilitation plan for Admiral Court that would be amenable to all of the tenants and meet the local community's needs. The final contract final agreement that they came to was 55 units of varying sizes, many of which were large enough to legally accommodate larger refugee families. They had a common area for the resident community to meet. They had a refugee service center office in the building itself.
Oh, okay.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like that.
Then, per a city request, 8 of the apartments were to be modified to be handicapped accessible.
Oh, the cherry on top.
Yeah. So after the rent strike had ended and this agreement came to light, Ong Kong, one of the tenants who was leading the strike, told the paper, "We in the building, we are so happy. We are glad we did the strike because there would be no change without it. Now most of us will stay right here."
Love it.
And
love it.
Yeah. So that was the 1985 Admiral Court rent strike.
Wow.
I'm not sure what happened to Mark Silverstein.
Who the fuck cares?
That's fair. I just want to know if he continued to own properties in West Philly and what properties.
Continue to be a dickhead.
Yeah. But yeah, so a community of refugees fleeing horrific wars
had to deal with horrific landlords.
Yep. And fought a rent strike and won.
There we go. I wasn't supposed to be feeling happy, Gabe, at the end of this episode. What happened?
That I figured everyone needed a little bit of a lift up here.
Yeah. I mean, it took us 25 minutes to get through the goddamn Vietnam saga, but we got there.
Well, I figured, especially this week, we can't really it can't be all happy. You got to ease your way into the happiness.
Yeah.
You don't want to shock anyone's system. No. So
today we mourn, tomorrow we fight, Gabe.
Mm-hmm.
God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless
I knew giving you a soundboard was a mistake.